Welcome to the I Do Wedding Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Nina Adio, a social media marketing expert specializing in the wedding industry. Each week, we'll explore the strategies, stories, and insider tips that help wedding professionals thrive. You'll hear solo episodes filled with actionable advice for social media and inspiring conversations with esteemed wedding industry guests. Thank you for tuning in and letting this podcast be a part of your day. Let's get started. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the I Do Wedding Marketing Podcast, or welcome if you're new here. On this podcast, we talk all things with all experts throughout the wedding industry. While my focus is social media marketing for the wedding industry, we bring in guests of all topics and all expertises. And today we actually have something we have not done on the podcast before. And we're going to be getting into human resources, entrepreneurship when you're going to be growing your team, growing your space. Do I need a 1099 employee, W-2? What is the difference? What do we need? So we're going to be talking about expanding your business and doing it the right way with Kira La Forgia of Paradigm Consulting. Paradigm Consulting is the go-to people operations resource for small business owners ready to protect, streamline, and scale their businesses. I see a lot with wedding professionals, planners, right? You start off kind of on your own and then you're able to grow a team, and maybe first it's a virtual assistant and then it's going to be somebody else to actually physically go to locations and to the weddings for you and so forth. So I really love that we're going to have Kira here today. Kira prides herself on actually enjoying 1099s, W-2s, FMLA, and FLSA. And I'm just like, what are these things? Kira has a decade of experience in people operations in the corporate world, but she's no stranger to the sensitive issues involved in the human side of running a business. So Kira is going to be giving us a lot of insights today that we have not gotten into on the I Do Wedding Marketing Podcast. So I'm really excited for us to grow our businesses with Kira today. Of course, if you want to get some more of the marketing tips, the social media tips, you can go to my Instagram, I Do Wedding Marketing, where I'm always sharing the latest, or check out our back catalog of over 150 episodes, and I know you'll find something to inspire you there. But for now, let's get inspired with Kira. Kira, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so happy to close out my week with you.
Yeah, we're doing this right like a Friday at 4. We're getting this in before the weekend deadline.
A little bit more unhinged than probably if we recorded on a Monday or Tuesday when I was at my most professional. So you'll get some real blunt truths in there probably.
Yeah, I've got nice coffee. I think, Kira, maybe you have an energy drink.
I sure do, Alani.
And where are you coming from today?
I'm in San Diego.
San Diego. I am, I'm sure you can tell from my accent, not only am I in New York, but after this, I'm going to a Goodfellas themed 40th birthday party. So I'm staying on brand today.
Oh my God, that's so fun. Yeah, I know. I feel like it's so weird that California and New York are so far apart, because I feel like we should just be mushed together because we get along so well, even though everyone's so different. But like, obviously everyone's different anyway. So
I did an introduction talking all about Paradigm and how we're really excited to have this topic on the podcast. But can you say in your own words your journey from corporate HR into now the online entrepreneur and wedding business space?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's kind of two parts to it. So one is starting out, I was really interested in people. And when I say starting out, I mean like right out of college and then finishing my master's. I ended up working in a really toxic corporate environment. I just wanted to do anything I could to escape and get out of it. Started working in small business, would have done anything, literally very close to illegal, literally anything to not go back to the cubicle. And over time, working in small business, I had taken a huge pay cut, overlooked other positions that were higher pay just to stay in an environment where I could see that I could make a difference. And then over time, I just sort of leveraged my master's degree in organizational management, my experience within the business, and took over, and sort of like, as people would leave, I would be like, hey, boss, can I absorb that person's job and get a raise? And just like really streamlined the ops in the business. Over the course of around 7 years, we saw an increase in sales of about 30%, and a much lower cost for labor because I had taken over a lot of senior positions. Sounds all good and great and everything, but what ended up happening was I live in San Diego. It's not cheap. We just were talking about how you're in New York. It's not cheap. So there was a lot of financial pressure, and I ended up burning myself out because I just refused to ask for any help. So I wanted to prove I could do all of these things, and I take a lot of accountability for being in a situation where I ended up getting diagnosed with PTSD as a result of burnout. And that made me really have to like shift back, look at what was going on around me, and start asking for help. And I'd already been cultivating this team. So they were just waiting in the wings, ready for me to let them go. And so even to this day, the same people that I called the day that I had to take some time off, or that I basically had a panic attack that eventually ended up in this diagnosis, are the same people that are running that company. And I'm still there as the COO. Now 7 years later, and I go in once a week, help direct the managers and the directors and make sure they feel supported so they can manage our team of 50 employees. But in that process, I just kind of learned small business owners really need to figure out how to deal with the people side of business in order to make a real sustainable business. So when COVID happened and I had my first like break from work for a few months, like not to sound crass, but that is sort of what happened. I just decided to finally take everything I'd been wanting to do and put it into helping small business owners, primarily women, but we work with all different types of people and genders, to figure out the people side of their business so that it could be a sustainable thing that they enjoy running. So more small businesses can stay around. We can start tackling some of those statistics about people going out of business, going back to corporate, getting jobs, because I do think that from a high level perspective, we sometimes need somebody to tell us like, that's not for you to do anymore. And that's sort of the first part of it. The second is much shorter, so I won't take up the whole podcast with all my trauma dumping. But the part about transitioning into weddings was really a result of one of the laws that we're probably going to talk about today. We work with primarily 4 different industries over the last 5 years. We've sprinkled in some wedding planners, some venues, things like that, just because HR is relevant for any business. But we've really worked with tons of planners over the last year, tons of different wedding pros, primarily because the law has required people to have people classified as employees, which means that you have to have your HR in order, be able to bring people in, let them go, stuff like that along the way. So it's really the market, the wedding planners and things like that have been asking us for support that have kind of moved us into like really focusing on this industry. And it's been so rewarding and fun after working with a lot of online service providers and agencies over the years, like getting to work with people that have in-person teams and in-person responsibilities and create a lot of like, not that digital stuff isn't beautiful, but like real in-person, like beautiful events has been such a fun reward and a nice transition. So I think that's how we met.
Yes. Now let's just get right into it and talk about the law. We're just going to call it the law. So we have listeners from all points of business. Some have been in business 20 years. Some are newly in business. So let's say somebody listening, they're at the 2-year mark. They're getting ready for their first hire and they're going, what? There's a law I need to know about? What is it?
Yeah, for sure. So, interestingly enough, about a year ago, almost to the day of when we're recording, I think it's just a week or so out, there was a law passed at the federal level. So basically there's this piece of legislation that's kind of like our HR Bible called the FLSA. So it's where all of the labor laws that are relevant for every single worker in every single state live. But on top of that, states have additional requirements and laws that they hold their own citizens to. That's why New York and California don't have the same minimum wage as Oklahoma or Texas. So basically, our job as HR is to filter through the federal law, make sure we're protecting businesses, and the state law on top of that. Previously, about 33 states have additional restrictions on how we classify contractors and employees, but it wasn't until March of last year that the Department of Labor issued a which still exists, which I know there's some other departments that don't, but it does still exist. The Federal Department of Labor actually issued what they're calling the final ruling on contractor classification. And this was primarily spawned by the fact that in 2020, there was a lot of confusion about who should get unemployment, who was a 1099, did they have employee rights, were they eligible for certain things, but because there was so much misclassification. So for something to be passed as a final ruling to change the FLSA is not something that happens often. It means that the government really recognizes that there's something to crack down on here. And also for that to happen in a short-ish period of time. Some of the laws we reference in the FLSA have been in place since like 1976. So for that to happen only from 2020 to 2024, it just shows us you have to pay attention to this. And then on the inside of things, we have a lot of clients that are coming to us as a result of this law cracking down on their businesses and having to pay back pay, penalties, misclassification fees, all kinds of stuff like that, which we hate to hear that fearful side of things, but it does exist. It is real and it is happening. And you will never hear my clients talk about it because they never let me tell their stories. So everyone is anonymous, but there are so many situations out there. So I think to answer your question really directly, that law is considered the final ruling on employee contractor classification at a federal level. States will also have additional regulations that make it even more strict. But if you're in business and you're thinking about hiring for the first time, it's just really important that you understand that distinction and don't be afraid of employees. Most businesses have employees. You just have to set yourself up to be successful with them. And then you can be really flexible about how much they're working, what you're paying for them, how long they're working for you, which is a huge thing for wedding pros, particularly planners, having assistants on the day of. Yes, they do have to be employees. I hate to have to tell you that. If you want to stay solo, there are so many ways that you can do that. The best way is to just primarily partner with other businesses. So you have a business to business arrangement if you need help on certain events. But we all know that assistant that you hired from Indeed or whatever that's going to come in and work a few weekends out of the year probably doesn't have a business that is going to send you a contract. So I would say that that's the biggest pain point for a lot of the wedding pros that we're working with. And there's some nuance there. So yeah, that's the thing that got everybody lining up to work with us. And I promise it sounds scary, but we are fun and they do love us.
Yeah, I'm already having fun. So. But I am low-key panicking at the same time. And I guess because of, things varying from state to state, you can't kind of just give a blanket rule of thumb to know if somebody should be a contractor or an employee. It's not that cut and dry.
Yeah, I mean, the federal ruling was kind of I know it was difficult for a lot of businesses to swallow, but if you take out the fear of employees, then it's not that hard to swallow. So like, I really want to try to combat that fear. But those 6 factors that come with that Department of Labor ruling, and there's so many resources out there that you can learn about this. Even the Department of Labor website gives you tons of examples for small businesses and what you should look for and what you shouldn't. Like, you don't have to come to me to learn about that. There's so many resources out there. And I'm happy to share our resource roundup as well, in case you want to dive in a little bit deeper and understand. Podcast episodes, blogs, we have a workshop, however you learn best, so that you can learn to make those decisions. But I think the big thing is that if you're looking at those 6 factors, and somebody is just checking every single box, then no matter what state you're in, it's probably going to be relevant. There's just a few states that are even a little bit more strict, or they pursue legal action in a more aggressive way.
Now, where a lot of people's first hire is a virtual assistant, how does that complicate things in the terms of a virtual assistant some could be overseas, some could be from a different state. So does that complicate this?
Well, I think I personally love the idea of virtual assistants. I actually just hired one for my in-person business to help me with a few really specific tasks. And I think that it's just more the mindset around it, where you're thinking, yes, you are my assistant and you're doing the tasks that I'm giving you, but I'm actually opting in as your client. So that means that you're going to tell me what you can offer. We're going to negotiate the contract. You're going to send me the contract. I'm going to sign in on it, and I'm going to show up where you tell me to if we need to meet. I'm going to, there's always some flexibility there, but primarily you want the business owner that you're partnering with as a virtual assistant to feel like a partner, not necessarily an employee or someone that's working for you. So, and that's across the board, virtual assistants, marketing agencies you might hire, all of that. And I think think that the one way to spin it is to think about it as this is another business owner, and we want to make sure that we are kind of protecting the autonomy of freelancers and business owners to have their own businesses and be able to grow their own businesses. And that's really what the factors speak to, is creating a space for freelancers to truly be free and for businesses to be able to kind of set up those boundaries so that they can make a more successful business. If you think about it as a business owner, if you're always waiting on the person that's paying you and you're at their whim and at, whatever, you're really dependent on them for economic stability or whatever, you're probably never going to be able to put the time into building your own business. We've also probably had clients like that think that way too. So I think that especially when it comes to a virtual assistant, the industry should be thriving. It's a great way to stay solo if you want to, but you are sacrificing control. So if there are certain deadlines you want met, ways that you want to communicate, things like that, you will sacrifice that control in order to stay a contractor to a business relationship. Whereas if you start to notice that little itch of like, damn, I wish I could send this message to somebody and they could reply immediately, or shoot, I wish they would be in my Slack, even though they prefer to work by email, then that's starting to show you that it's not that you can't have a virtual assistant. It's just that you may be growing out of that agreement. And you can still keep your virtual assistant doing whatever they were doing, but start to really consider how it would impact you if you had all of this control and how it would impact your company's growth.
Yeah, what I'm noticing on my end is with a virtual assistant, I don't have, let's say, ownership of that time. They have a set amount of hours per month, and they could do that all at the end of the month. That's their right to do,
Yes.
And so I imagine if you want a bit more of a say in how that time is used, then maybe that's when to explore it. If you were working with a virtual assistant, let's just go like really easy to someone who's never done this before, what forms do they need to fill out to have yourself protected?
So if you want to keep it as a contractor, I'm imagining. So you're actually just going to have them lead you. So basically it's like, tell me about your package. I'll tell you exactly how I hired this virtual assistant recently. She specializes in the area that I needed. She had experience in the system that I needed use, and she works primarily with owners of businesses of this specific industry. So she has all this knowledge. So her packages are literally built exactly for the tasks that I needed done. So when she and I met, it was definitely like can you tell me a little bit more about what you offer? And she kind of listed the different buckets of services that she provides. And I was like, great, I'd like number 1, number 3, and number 4. And she was like, awesome. And then we just agreed on a turnaround time, which it's usually right around a week. You're probably not going to be able to rely on virtual assistants to do everything within a few days. We built that into the contract. And then essentially I was like, send me your contract, send me your invoice, and tell me like what the next steps are. And they're an expert in what they're doing. So with a VA, it can be a little different because they may not be specialized in a certain area, but I would highly recommend pushing your VA to be like, why don't you write out the scope of this contract that we can negotiate and sign their contract. The only thing that I would recommend is that you also have an NDA that you can send over to them, because you're agreeing to their service offering. So it's a true business to business relationship, but the scope of the contract can vary depending on what you decide to agree on. Now, there's going to be some areas where it's like, well, now you're just trying to trick us into thinking this person is a contractor when they're really an employee. But we're hopeful that VAs will be able to kind of stand their ground and say, no, this is actually what I can deliver. This is the time frame in which I can deliver it. And this is the area of time that I can. So like for your example, with your contractor, you might want to go back and revisit your contract and say, hey, I'd love it if you worked, 3 to 5 hours a week instead of 20 hours a month, because that way we can, and I'd love it if we had a standing meeting on Thursdays, whatever time works for you. What you can't say is, I want you to meet me at this time. I don't care what's going on in your life, blah, 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 blah. It has to be an agreed upon partnership type of decision. And little tweaks like that can make a big difference, but just keep an eye on it, because no matter what, if you have to spell out a specific scope for a contract for a worker, there is going to be a time when you're like, yeah, I need them to just know, or I need them to just do, or I need them to just embody my brand, or, whatever the case may be. I know we'll probably get to this, but a couple of examples of that is like, you're likely not ever going to have a contractor that's client facing, because you can't control how they talk, speak, act, or represent your brand. And you don't have any repercussions if they do something weird. So that's one way to really count on making sure that it's accurate. The other is if you need them at specific times or with quick turnaround times. And if you don't do it, and then there's some type of repercussion that's going to stop your business from progressing. And the final thing is, if you're writing a job description, that's an employee.
Yeah, this was already because when you said if you need them at a specific time, so already we're saying like a second shooter, an associate planner, where somebody needs to be showing up at a specific time for a specific event, that's employee.
Yes, for sure. Second shooters are nice because there are business to business exemptions. Like, for example, like I might hire a marketing agency to help me with my business. Or if any of our clients hire us, we have a specialized skill set. So they're obviously not providing HR services for their clients when they're a wedding planner. So it's a really easy way to justify a business to business exception. This also happens quite a bit. There are some states where it's going to be a bit of a stretch, but for second shooters, most of the time they have their own photography business. So you can basically have them send you a contract for whatever service they provide as a second shooter, and you're essentially buying into that second shooter service. And that's some advice that I would give to wedding photographers, any photographer across the board, is to make sure you have some type of secret service that's between you and other photographers that they can opt into as like a second shooter or something like that, so that you can make sure that you're covering your butt, but you're also making it really easy for people to hire you for that. And I know it sounds really weird, but those are some examples that we have seen unfold in the labor board courts, different like penalties being paid. And it's not always about the second shooter. Sometimes that's just what brings the attention to the audit. But when the audit comes, it covers everything in your business. And there really isn't like a time period that they're looking at. They're actually going to look at pattern of behavior for how you work with 1099s overall.
If you're hiring, let's say a VA from overseas, do they still have to fill out a 1099?
No. So 1099s are basically income like forms for United States residents. So if you have a VA that's overseas, that like truthfully, like the way I think about it is like their laws are none of my business. So like there is if you want someone that's overseas, or if somebody overseas is working for you, or I mean, when we say overseas, we could even mean Canada or something like that. So I would just be really careful that you have like true contractor relationships with them. But what I have noticed is even before there's any type of legal concern, the issue with overseas VAs is just the business grows out of them. They need them to respond more during business hours. And that's not that big of a deal when you're first starting out, but you do kind of start to notice it as you keep going in business and you keep working. There's just some things that kind of require a little bit more synchronous communication.
So you're already giving me a lot of great examples of what I was going to ask is, mistakes you see people making. So one is hiring somebody on more of a virtual assistant basis when you need more direct help, or like we got into with the business to business for second shooters. And a side note, that's what I love about having you talk about this, is that you understand the industry. So there was no explaining what that is and things like that. So that I know our listeners will appreciate. Are they other common mistakes you see wedding professionals make when starting to build a team?
I think that I know that this is like so abstract, but it really does come down to fear. I think there's a lot of examples, and maybe we've been able to do a lot with a little when it comes to building a team. But the reality of the situation is that you can have a really profitable wedding business with a really small team, and we can be afraid of that sometimes. So I think the first thing is that people hold back from what they really want in their business because they're telling themselves a story about how they want their team to look. So I would say that that's one thing, is to just make sure that you're, I don't know, like not to sound cheesy, but just like be brave about your business, like go big, like look at what the options are, because there's so many talented, creative people that are creating beautiful weddings and beautiful events that are holding themselves back a little bit from growth, or maybe even afraid to like tap into what they really want their business to look like, because they're trying to figure out how to do that without true support from employees. And I understand that, because HR compliance doesn't even happen until after somebody is classified as an employee. So like, we don't like, I'll give you resources all day about employee contractor, but once you start to get that feeling that you want a little bit more support and you want to grow and you want to like take out that feeling of like, I don't want employees, how does this limit me? Then we can help you. The second part is that once you do decide to hire employees and you do decide to embrace that, there are definitely minimum viable ways to get people classified correctly. And trust me, if you get them classified as an employee, the fines are going to be much, much, much less for making HR mistakes along the way, but they will happen. So remember that compliance isn't just misclassification. That's just one of the bigger fines that you can get due to the extent of the audits that come through. Versus like HR penalties might just be a few $1,000s here and there. But what we've done is sort of designed a way for people to get all of that out of the way, out the gate in 90 days. So you don't necessarily have to have an HR person on your team forever and ever. But most of our clients stay with us and stay connected to us because we know their teams know us. We can help mitigate risk. We let them know when laws change, stuff like that. But it's nothing to be scared of. It's just another way to get support for your business so that you're not alone. And I think that's one of the mistakes people make. And we often have to undo some of the things that happen when you're like, I got to classify people correctly. And sometimes that means almost hiring a whole new team with brand new expectations, the lessons that you've learned, maybe not doing it as well as you could have, but I'm still proud of you for classifying them correctly because you probably saved yourself a lot of money on penalties there.
When a business starts working with you for their teams, how big are the teams at that point? Can it be just as little as one, or are we talking about, where its team is 6 or more?
Yeah, that's a great question. And something that we've sort of, business brain to business brain have struggled with over the years, because there's definitely risk when you hire even one employee. We have to follow the same laws with one employee, and 95% of the laws are exactly the same if you have 500 or 2,000 employees. We just don't have the resources to fight those things in court if they come up. But I think that we've kind of landed on, we used to have like a service about hire your first employee, and that was great. And I think our clients are super happy about it. It's very similar to our normal service. But we've kind of landed on, once you have 2 employees, then you start to see some friction points and you start to realize things might need to be streamlined a little bit, or you're not sure how to answer certain questions, especially if they're in multiple states. Some of our clients come to us like right at that point. But lately, when people are asking me, I'm ready to hire my first employee, what do I do? I'm like, I want you to go and just add them to payroll, get them classified correctly, do some basic research to make sure you're not messing up the big things, but then come to us, because in a couple months, you're going to be ready to hire that second person. And then it's going to be a lot less of a mess to clean up if we've only dealt with the one employee. And I think that can be a really cool moment, because you've sort of decided, I don't just need somebody to help me and be my right hand. I actually want to grow a team. So ideally, people come to us when they're starting to bring on that second employee and they're starting to get that itch that's like, I'm ready to be a leader. I'm ready to get out of the client work. I'm ready to network and sell and create content, or, however that manifests. And I need a team to do all the things I was doing before that I personally am growing out of. That seems to be the sweet spot. But sometimes people come to us and they already have 8 employees or 12 or 22 or whatever the case may be. And they just need to get things streamlined and under control.
That's a really exciting time in someone's business that you're getting to work with them at.
Yeah.
How do we know we're financially ready for an employee? Because that's what scares me about it.
Yeah. I mean, it's really just a strategy, like the same thing with anything else. Any other investment that you might make in business is the same as your team, with the exception of the investment is not just what you're paying them, but it's usually what you're paying for the support outside of them to get them sorted. So that's not just HR, that's not just us, but it's also your payroll system, insurance, stuff like that. So bare minimum advice is that if you are hiring an employee, you're probably going to want to budget about 20% over their salary for insurances, softwares, blah, 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 stuff like that. How we know you can afford it is literally just math based on your offers. So what I would do is even just pull up an Excel spreadsheet and put down how much you're charging for your offers and how many hours are being put in by each individual person. Whatever you think you're paying yourself, double it, because we need to be able to plan for you to be out of that situation. So I want you to see the value of how you're producing those offers, and then basically just break it down from there. If your offers are, like, let's just say, this is a good example. A copywriter can't hire a copywriter unless they're an employee, because one of the rules is that if you are offering a specific service, like you're a copywriting agency, then the people that are doing the service, copywriters, have to be classified as an employee. Otherwise, it looks like exploitation of lower level businesses. So essentially, let's say you have a copywriting offer that's $2,000 a month, and it takes your team 25 hours to do it. And I mean, just because of math, let's say it's $10 an hour. that offers $2,000, your labor's $250, you're going to be totally fine. So there's little things like that that can help you feel a little bit better, but obviously we don't want to leave the rest of your, financials behind. But that sometimes is like how big the margin is on these offers, where you might charge $2,000. Let's just chop that in half for operations and taxes. So you have $1,000 to work with. You can staff it with that budget. And I think that that's just a nice, simple way to think about it when you're thinking about your first person, because it is an investment, but it should make you money right out the gate.
I love when you said in the beginning of the answer that it's literally just math. I was like, well, that's the problem. So let's say, they're ready to do this. There's some things they're going to need in place. And one of them is an employee handbook. Now, is that something that is just for big businesses, or do we small guys need that too?
I'm obviously very biased, but in most states, I think it depends on how you interpret the law, but in most states, it doesn't actually say you need an employee handbook. But in all states, there's stuff we have to provide for our teams, and there's nowhere else to put it. So in my opinion, every business needs an employee handbook when they bring their person on. And that's just because I think it creates a set of expectations that make those hires a lot smoother. So even little things like how you, like the paydays that you have and the pay periods that you have and how they track time should be a policy that everyone on the team signs off on. So what I often see small businesses do is they believe that the most important things are whatever the payroll system asks for and the job description. And I would say that is an incredible start, but how do you want them to behave? That doesn't necessarily fit in the job description. There isn't an employee contract. So the only types of employees that have contracts are usually like CEOs for big businesses and stuff like that. We work with agreements, and essentially the labor board is looking for ways for the business to set up expectations clearly, have a path of communication to set your workers up for success, and then you can make the best decision for your business if it doesn't work out. So I would say when we go back to that handbook, it's not just about the policies that you need to create, but they kind of have to go somewhere, because otherwise, even if you have 2 employees and they're in 2 different states and they have 2 different PTO requirements, like one has a sick leave policy that is accrual only, one of them is not, whatever the case may be, then we have to be able to put that somewhere that they can sign off on it. And it, with a handbook averaging around, 50 to 80 policies, depending on the type of business. Wedding businesses tend to be on the higher side because there's in-person stuff and remote stuff to consider. Then that can get really overwhelming. And honestly, I'm not the type of CEO that likes thinking about all of those little pieces. When it comes, let's just say like I'm thinking about stuff like a marketer and you're telling me about a brand guide, that makes me want to die. So I'm sure this makes other business owners want to die, but it is such a relief to have that thing running in the back of your business, and you can refer to it all the time. And as you're building your business, our clients say they sometimes look at it like once a week. They're not changing it. They're just like, what am I supposed to do about this? How am I protected with this? What can I reference to help my team be more successful? And I think that that's kind of you don't have to have one, but it does make your life a lot easier and a lot better. But it is an expense because it's quite nuanced to make sure that it's legal wherever you're using it too. So that's why I always say, try it out with that first employee, like DIY some stuff, and then let us know when you get to the second, because that's when it'll start to get a little confusing.
I once had an employer where whenever I guess you pissed them off, they would update the handbook. Like it became like a passive aggressive employee handbook.
Yeah.
Like it was like any little thing that happened, they'd update the handbook, and it became like this traumatic thing.
That's so, and you are allowed to, like, you're supposed to learn and develop and grow and refine, but like most of the time, like we know, like not to brag, but especially my team is so incredible. We know what we need to have in there because, like you said earlier, we've worked with 25 other businesses like yours, and we have worked with those employees when they start going off the rails, and we know what policies we might recommend. And so I think that we want to try to get ahead of that as much as possible so that your handbook gets an annual audit, primarily based on legal stuff that might change. But the rest of it, like your team can quote like the back of their hand, and they know where to find it. And it actually creates a situation where they feel more supported because they know that they're going to get a straight answer.
Great. That's, I like that much better than just like whenever you're annoyed, update the book.
Oh my gosh. I can imagine. I mean, there's been times, trust me, where I'm like, we should add this to the handbook because like it's some super random thing that some employee did that you never knew was going to happen. Those will happen.
the direct outfit I wore is detailed as to what not to wear. Like,
We have this employee at my in-person job, and he had like flame tattoos on his neck. And now, since then, we've taken out the policy that tattoos can't be visible, because I think we need to like move into the 21st century or whatever. But at the time, I had like one of my fellow managers, when I was like kind of moving up the chain in this business, was like, hey, like we need to put something in the handbook that like no neck tattoos. And I was like, but it already says like no visible tattoos. Like, what are we going to do? Have them wear a turtleneck every day?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It was just kind of, it reminds me of that. Cause it's like, you can't just go to the hand. Like you need to like, I don't know. It was just kind of a weird thing. And it's not cool for the culture when people don't know what to expect. What are they going to do? Get their tattoo removed? Like, what are you just trying to get them fired? Like have some balls and fire them then.
Yes. Like it felt like instead of being something to use to protect you, it felt like something being used against you.
Yeah. Right? To set you up for failure.
Yeah. Which is what we want to avoid. And I think, I'm getting the idea, maybe this was part of your experience too, but that's what pushed me to entrepreneurship, right? Is wanting that safety and protection and to get out of toxic places or burnout even as well. So how can compliance, HR, how can this help from burnout?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, I think I'm kind of, not to get like super vulnerable, but I'm kind of going through this right now because we've been through a period of rapid growth, and having been diagnosed with PTSD from burnout before, I noticed the stresses of the business, even though I'm so passionate about it and truly care so much about all of our clients. Like, I just feel like there are times when we get to those points where we're like, why am I even doing this? What is even the point? Blah, blah, blah. And the cure for burnout is fulfillment. And the only way that we can be fulfilled is to guarantee that we're working on the things that really light us up. And if you're running a business that's going to be around for a long time, you probably said this a million times before, like, oh my God, I delegated that years ago. I don't want to go back to doing that. That's the fastest way to burn out, is to make sure that you don't have the right people in the right seats to get the right support, to have to slide backwards and put yourself in a position to be unfulfilled by your business. And like, I've just been doing a lot of thinking about this, because as we're kind of changing my business around, I know that the answer is making sure I have the right people doing the right tasks. I know that that's the only way that I'm going to get to carve out some time to be able to do the things that really fulfill me, like talking to you and recording podcasts and having really deep conversations with our clients about their business strategy. Like, those are the things I want to do. So I don't want to do the same stuff that I was building for the first time back in 2020. Like, as much as I know those are powerful things, I delegated those years ago. To go back to that would be like, I would feel like I'm in hell. Part of that's because I have ADHD, but it's just a weird phenomenon that I think we need to pay attention to. And my coach recently said, the option isn't if your team member can't do that anymore, or they're like totally at capacity and so they can't handle that task, or you hired someone and it didn't work out, or whatever the case may be. It's not, okay, well, I'm just going to do it myself. It's who's going to do that for me? Who's going to do that for the business? Because it can't be me. And I think that line in the sand can be really hard to accept, because it is sometimes a lot easier to just do it yourself. So the rule that I've kind of made for myself, especially as I'm kind of going through this and finding some peace in the fact that I have this knowledge and expertise to help me tweak things, it's kind of showing me like, okay, I can look at my team, who every single person is incredible, although we've had some changes recently, and I can figure out where I want them to go and what I want to add to their job, what I can budget to get off my plate. Like, those are all really powerful things that I can do right now that also fulfill me to think about that strategy. And I think that's the thing that after our 90-day thing with our clients, those are the questions that they come and bring to us. Like, besides the onboarding and offboarding and the team stuff, they're like, something's not working. I'm working too much. It's not adding up. Like, I'm not sure where the margins are going. Like, that strategy of like, okay, but we got to get you back in the driver's seat. So let's think about the people, because they're going to be your ticket to feeling fulfilled and preventing burnout.
Yeah, it's really interesting, that fulfillment part, because our passion, which is for, I think, a lot in the wedding industry, is our work, is what fulfills us. But it's also what's causing our burnout, because we're so passionate about it. We want to be doing it. We keep booking. So then really the only solution is the team, right?
I think so.
Yeah. Because otherwise it's either that or really limiting the business, I guess, to avoid the burnout.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you want to stay solo, there's nothing wrong with that. You can absolutely do that. You'll have limited support and you may be wrangling a few different people to make sure that you're staying in your place that you want to work. But I mean, yeah, the option is, again, it's math, like it's supply and demand. If you're a really, really in demand wedding planner and you're finding that you don't want to have a team and you're not really enjoying this like kind of hustle to get new clients, you need to become a luxury wedding planner so that you don't have to have that many clients. And the challenge would be, how do I make my services worth what I need to charge for them to make sure that I have the business model that I enjoy? Or you can keep it the same, have things keep running the same, and find another way to make sure that you're being fulfilled in your life. So whether that's just like cutting down your work hours, trying to delegate to as many contractors as possible, because there are some times when we consider contractors part of our team, but it's not really the same level of support as if somebody's like really wearing the wedding planner shirt, going to the events, showing up on Zoom, showing up for those team meetings, building a culture. There's no other level of support like it. So I think that's one thing I really want to differentiate, is that having contractors and having employees are totally different roles for you as the leader. And especially with wedding planners, what I've noticed is that their work really does light them up, but not the like wrangling of the florists and the dealing with the mother of the bride and all of that stuff. So there can be like a minimum viable employee that you bring on, and we're really pinpointing what we want them to do, and trying to keep as much of that focused on what you need for your business, because it's not going to look the same as others. I think we have like 6 wedding planner clients right now, and I've asked every single one of them, what is your vision for the company and what is your vision for your job? And not one of them answered the same way. So that really affects how we're helping them design their organization. So I think that's a big thing too, is that what works for someone else might not work for you. And that's totally fine. We also have disabilities or cognitive differences or family issues. Tons of moms out there are trying to make all this happen on their own. All of that is something to consider, nothing to be ashamed of. But if you're not fully considering the role that plays in how you run your business, then you're not going to be able to build a support around you.
Sounds like working with you and Paradigm is very collaborative. Can you give a scope of what it looks like to work with you?
Yeah, for sure. So I'd like to think it's collaborative, but generally speaking, we consider that 90-day package. It's our signature service. It's called the Paradigm Solution. It's trademarked and everything. I'm very proud of that. Shout out to Braden from Not Your Average Law. Great guy.
There you go.
Yeah, he's done 4 of our trademarks. I did a lot of price shopping. Go check him out. He's definitely, it was a really great experience.
Yeah, I see right on the website, the tab with the little trademark on there.
Yeah. Yeah, he's great. And also it was really empowering because this service has had over 100 clients go through, and we hit 100 clients at the end of last year, which was a huge goal for me. It was right around the same time I published my 100th podcast episode. So it feels like it was like a big shift. I feel like business owners totally know that feeling of like, whoa, I'm going into a different phase of business. That is all to say that the process is pretty much the same. It starts with compliance. We lead into people operations, and throughout we're working on your culture. And I know that sounds really intangible. So we've been able to create something called a culture guide, so that we're sort of guiding along what you want your culture to look like, making sure that we're defining it, making sure the decisions you make are right in line with what you want your culture to look like. So that of course includes handbook. We do your personnel files, all of that stuff. But at the same time, we're building out your org charts, where we have a labor margin calculator tool, so you can actually do that math about your employees. You also get an employee cost calculator, so you can see not just on the offer side, but how much this employee is going to cost you, how you can budget it, what benefits and perks you can offer, things like that. And we try to be as strategic as possible in interacting with your team so that they know that they can come to us. And I obviously can't tell those stories, but there has been more times than I can count where we're hearing from employees from our clients, and we're able to mitigate a lot of risk because of a misunderstanding or a conflict or something like that, and help them get down the right path. And usually it's utilizing the policies in the handbook to help bring clarity to the situation before it ever gets to the CEO. So that's a huge focus for us. And I think that for many of our clients, I'm definitely not a coach. I am a consultant. I will tell you what to do and how to do it. And that service is a done for you service. You just have to come to 3 calls. And then we have our Slack channel, which is going off every single day. But for the most part, it's it's a strategic support for what direction you want your business to move when you're at the place where team is the priority at the time.
Now, if someone right now has just what they believe are contractors, would they not fit into this, or would they still, because it's possible that that's not the direction they need to go?
Yeah. I mean, if you have a few contractors that you think you might want to move to employees, I would say that's like probably where all of our wedding planners start. It's just some of them have 2 or 3 and some of them have 7 or 8. And then of course there's this time of year where we're also onboarding a handful of assistants and putting them into the payroll system, and also trying to figure out little ways to make it affordable to have people come in as employees for short periods of time, but also legal. So that there isn't any issues when you have an assistant that's a temporary employee, for example, and there's that expectation up front. So there's no like wrongful discrimination or wrongful termination or any of those lawsuits that can pop up anytime that you employ anyone. What we really want to avoid is having someone basically apply for unemployment as a contractor, and then that will immediately trigger an audit for your business. So I would say that most of the time, if you've identified that your contractors probably should be employees, or anything that we talked about today is like kind of triggering that for you a little bit, where you're like, gosh, I'm not going to sleep as well not knowing, or whatever the case may be, it's probably a good time to reach out and book a call. But also outside of that, like if you want to do a little bit more research just to see how this might fit in, we have plenty of free resources for that. But I think the main thing is just make sure that you're not afraid to reach out and ask for help, because there's the weird thing about HR and kind of the penalties and stuff that come with these issues is that when we signed up for our LLC, when we started taking money from people and selling them stuff, we signed up to fulfill these laws. The employer has the responsibility, not the employee. So if you are not following the law, they're not going to call you and be like, hey, what's up with this? They're going to just send you the bill or let you know that an audit has been triggered. And you're not going to be able to say, I didn't know. And so that's going to mean that the first thing you're going to do is have to go to an attorney and make sure that you can mitigate that risk as much, or mitigate that penalty as much as possible. So there just isn't a lot of time between, oh, I've made this realization and this could land in my mailbox any day. I'm not saying that's going to happen to everyone, but it definitely does happen. And I think that one of the best things that you can do is just try to put things in place to lower that risk as much as possible. I'm not saying every contractor has to be moved over to employee, but looking at it through a critical lens and having that be part of our process, I think has been really valuable to, especially our wedding clients, that they're like, really, I have to, I would never tell somebody to do something illegal, of course, but really I have to have this assistant come and I have to add them to payroll and I have to do all this. What we're going to do is make it no big deal to add someone to payroll. Okay. It's just going to be like, yeah, I added them in. It's fine. Moving on. And it's not a big deal because you have all the pieces in place in the back end to protect you.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Now, the next 2 questions I'm going to get to, these are the questions I'm asking everybody this season on the podcast. It's really cool. For my own growth to pick the brains of other business owners. So What is your morning routine?
Oh my God. Okay. So I am not a person that does that type of thing. I would say that the most valuable part of my morning routine has just been honoring whatever it is that my mind and my body is telling me to do. And part of that has been staying away from things that are causing a lot of stress or can be really triggering. There's always something that's on fire somewhere, especially when I work as a COO for an in-person business and run my own business. So being able to really trust that in the morning when I wake up, I can, and especially because I'm on the West Coast, so I'm always behind everybody. I think it's really important to be able to trust that the team has everything under control. I can trust them to deal with anything that's popping up, and taking care of myself first. So whether that's going on a walk, spending time out in my backyard, gardening, having a quick breakfast, like all of those things that I definitely don't do perfectly, but I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to start my days from a place of neutrality instead of like being in panic mode, especially when it comes to like all these other stressful things going on in the world. So that's my morning routine, is literally just do what I need to do to take care of myself. And then once 9 o'clock hits, I can focus on whatever I've committed to that day, professionally or personally or whatever.
Fantastic. And I'm not a morning routine person either, which is why I'm asking everyone this, because I'm trying to get one.
Yeah. I mean, I think we can all use some more structure. Yeah. I think it's actually just been a really big step for me to be like, I don't have to have a routine, but I do have to prioritize myself. And to me, that feels like more of a routine than I've ever even had before.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, how do you continue your own education?
Well, I think part of it is that because things are changing so often in our sphere, I kind of have to be on top of everything. But the other thing is just, I really enjoy learning and kind of understanding other people's perspectives. So I don't put too much pressure on myself to consume content that is all business all the time. Like I probably listen to like a couple of business podcasts a week and the rest are like about Bravo or like whatever. So, or like usually murder. So
Same.
yeah, and I think that's enough. I think that for me, it's about choosing the thing that I'm going to be into at the moment and really like trying to soak up as much of it as I can and then moving on to the next thing. One of the, like, for example, this year, I feel like the first part of the year was really spent figuring out how to onboard and train and have an assistant that manages my inbox and where I need to be, my scheduling, what I need to be doing, all of that. That's really taken a lot of time off my plate and given me a level of support that I haven't experienced before. And in February, I started to really dive into more of the, I guess, like mental load of running a business and like really making sure that I have a support system behind me as an individual. I feel like March was all about AI. I've just had so much fun playing with AI and I'm really like excited about the opportunity to mess around with something that's also been really beneficial for my business. And April, I don't know. Like, I feel like there seems to be, if I try to do too many things at once, especially because I have ADHD, I'll lose interest in all of them. So I'm just kind of like that hyper fixate thing and just make sure there's always something that I'm working on or thinking about. I'll take a workshop on AI stuff or, you know, whatever the case may be. And it benefits the business, even though it's not about like the new law in Connecticut or whatever.
Yes, I can totally relate to how sometimes going out of your business, it still can help it because you're getting that inspiration and those ideas from other places.
Yeah.
Can you tell our audience about your podcast and where they can find you and Paradigm?
Yeah, for sure. So my podcast is called On the Up and Up, which I thought was such a brilliant idea, but now I'm realizing that it doesn't really tell people what it's about. But basically, it was because we want to do business right on the up and up, but we're also growing. And I wanted to make sure and reflect that that was kind of what we talk about is this journey from kind of that moment when you figure out that you have to switch from being the delivery person in your business to being the leader of your business and the little struggles that come with that along the way. Also doing that myself, sharing my own experiences, stuff like that. It's kind of like a verbal processing therapy thing. But I also have like incredible clients and friends, and they give really great advice on interviews and things like that too, which is really fun. And of course, like I'm on Instagram. So if something in this podcast kind of triggered you, like don't be afraid to send me a voice memo and just let me know, like, hey, like I have a question about this contractor thing. Like, what do you think? And I can send you a resource to check out or whatever the case may be. We're currently promoting our HR self-assessment. So if you've already kind of started on your HR, you can grab this. It's just a simple checklist Google Doc thing that you can run through and be like, yeah, wow, I really need some help with this. Or you can use it as a guide to kind of walk you through what you need to build for your own business.
Yeah, don't be shy to reach out to Kira because that's as soon as we stop recording, that's what I'm going to do. I've been either directly asking questions that I needed to know for myself, or I've been making notes of what they're going to be. And I know that when you guys go over to her website, you're going to find a lot of information already there. And anything else you need to know, I know she'll answer for you. So I'll have all of those linked in the show notes for you. Kira, thank you so much for being here.
I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to come back and answer all of your follow-up questions on a live recording too.
There we go. Oh yeah, we should just make it a live session, except I'm afraid of being like audited directly as a result when they realize how out of sorts it is.
I don't know I haven't heard that happen yet, where someone has admitted something to me on a podcast and then they get audited. So I don't know that the IRS and the DOL is like listening to me yap, but
I'm very popular with the DOL.